yearning for a new future becomes very positive. And in fact, were it not for that probably paved the way for Christianity.
Yes, definitely.
So much of that then becomes early Christianity. Anyway, so the Sfat Emes is a very interesting thing, which I think is very very beautiful. So there's a famous line that says that every generation in which the temple is not rebuilt, it is as though the temple was destroyed in that generation.
So it's our fault if a generation does not rebuild the temple?
That's the exact words. Kol dor she'eno nivne b'yamav. Every generation that is not built in his days, ki'ilu nechrav b'yamav. It's as though it was destroyed.
So who said this?
It's a line of the Gemara.
Yeah, it comes from the Gemara. I didn't think it was original to the
No.
the Sfat Emes.
So he's trying to explain it. So
Yeah.
he says, how can that even be? That doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. I mean, we had the generation of the Ari. We had great generations, the whole Sfat crowd. So, with all these like tremendous mystical influences, all these generations that happened afterwards, the Rishonim, all the great generations of Jewish history, how can you say that they destroyed the temple?
Yeah.
So he says a very interesting thing. And he goes, no, I think this is really, for our day, this is a truth. So he goes, that's not what it means. He goes, the rebuilding, transforming, if you want to say, the remaking of the Jewish future is not a one-generational game. But rather, every generation that takes a positive step forward puts another brick in the wall, to quote Pink Floyd. Every generation contributes to the building of the third Commonwealth, of the third temple.
So that he kind of turns it on it, overturns the table.
Well, yeah.
Instead of blaming each generation, he's saying each generation is contributing towards building up the temple.
And those that are sinful, I suppose you might say, those who don't contribute, or those who don't contribute to building the wall. But this is a continuous chain of transformational activity that leads to this world transformation. After all, Judaism now internalized this view that the third temple and the coming of the Mashiach is not a national historical event anymore, but rather a transformation of the world. So this is this will be the end of war, the transformation. This will be the era of universal peace and happiness, etc. So each step forward is contributed by every generation, which is it's kind of an evolution forward, which is interesting because you hear a lot of times from and you hear this dialogue. On the one hand, Rav Kook speaks about it. They say that that every generation is lesser, but yet on the other hand, every generation is one step closer. So there's a continuing dialectic. There's a kind of conception almost of spiritual evolution that happens generation to generation. Now, maybe that you need more construction in the foundation than you need in the upper stories. So maybe our small bricks, as opposed to the big bricks of our ancestors. But be it as it may, this is a continuing process which we are all part of. And I want to do there's one other Hasidic text, and then I want to turn to our Jewish thinkers of other camps.
Chabad Lubavitch, Berlin. A good New Year.
I think it's appropriate.
The apple with honey.
I had a very beautiful Rosh Hashanah with Rav Tachtal in Berlin Chabad.
We should all spend Rosh Hashanah in Berlin.
Yes, we'll have
Passover in Egypt, Rosh Hashanah
in Cambodia,
in Berlin.
So let me find this. This is a remarkable text. This is widely cited, but it is relevant to our.
Now the chat room wants to know your background. So your grandparents were Hasidic and your parents were modern Orthodox?
No. My grandparents were it's more complicated. It's not as easy as that. But my ancestors on one side were Hungarian Slovak Hasidim, and my others were Gerach Hasidim. One on my father's side of the family, before the war, they became sort of. It doesn't correspond to our modern Orthodox.
Yeah.
They were
Zionists?
They were Hebrews,
Which is
Zionists.
Zionists, yeah.
And on my mother's side, they are all to this day Bavur Hasidim. And
There's a guest 11 says that you're a lot like Mark Gaffney. I've also seen the resemblance.
somebody's being funny, right? So Mark Gaffney and I were high school colleagues. We went to high school together.
They want to know
We
which
go back a
strain,
long way.
which strain you belong to today.
Today I'm a textual chassid. Today we're going to talk about text. Wait, can we do this?
Yes, go for it. I'm just explaining to them that you're
So
a
I think-
textual chassid.
So I think this is a very important. This teaching is very profound and really worthy of contemplation. So, the Gemara in Yuma says that when when Titus came into the Beis Hamikdash, in the Beit Hamikdash to destroy everything, he not only destroyed but he desecrated it. He stabbed. It says he stabbed stuff and blood came out and all kinds of. And he took a prostitute in there and cohabited with her, as they say in religious language.
Cohabit. Yeah, Freud people never say the word sex. They say cohabit, no, da da da.
Well, children are reading this, yeah.
But yeah.
So, it's interesting. So, you know that story, right? I mean,
Yes.
I remember this so well from being like 9 or 10 years old. You know how that story goes, right? So he does that, and then he brags that he destroyed the temple, and then he says, "God, you're nothing," and he gets on a boat, and the boat starts to sink, and he says, "God, I understand you're a God of water. Every time somebody causes you trouble, you drown them. But what can you do to me on land? Right? Are you some kind of water god? Are you like Poseidon?" So God lets the boat go, and then on land, and this is the kind of thing that when you're 10 years old, you sticks in your head. A mosquito flies into his nose and torments him.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. They have he pays Gentile blacksmiths to pound. When they pound on the hammers, that noise stops the bug from eating his brain, so he gets some respite. He would pay the Gentile blacksmiths, but not the Jews, because the Jewish blacksmith, their reward was seeing his revenge, God's revenge against him. Interesting. And then when Titus dies, they open up his brain, and there's a bug the size of a bird in there, sort of lounging around, scraping his copper teeth. It describes it. But anyway, the problem with that story is one thing. It says that when the enemies entered the temple, they saw the cherubs intertwined.
Yes. Which meant that the Jews were united.
Right, but it doesn't make any sense. Because, as we know from the Talmud, so first of all, there's a historical note, or Tzadok points out, actually in the Second Temple there weren't actual kruvim. So, that was only in the First Temple. So he says that it was a mural on the wall that signified it, but it was the same idea. So, how can that be, right? It doesn't make any sense. If the Jews had sinned to the point where the temple was being destroyed, why were the kruvim showing in that embrace that signified a good relationship between God and the people? If the kruvim were the barometer, you'd think that at the time of the destruction of the temple, that would be as off the scale as possible. So the answer is that had they come in an hour earlier, perhaps they would have been turned around. But what happens then is that there is a massive moment of tshuva, of repentance. On the part
Yes.
the moment they saw that it was lost, and the temple was going to be destroyed, and this stuff was really going to happen, there was a huge wave of instant tshuva, instant karma, so instant tshuva, and the whole nation that led to an important textual statement that I think is going to be the center of what I want to say today.
Okay, say it.
And that is that the Midrashim tell us that the Mashiach is born at that moment. So the sign that this transformation at that moment